Alrighty, so for some of you, you may have never actually seen drafting at all. So this first section, I'm just going to show you some of this drafting so you can get an idea of what ground plan section and elevations mean exactly when I'm talking about it later. But this whole thing is a plate of drafting. The show is Rigoletto, and you can see over here in the title block, this little block down here with all this extra information, you've got the title and a lot of additional things for the actual show. This plate is actually something that not a lot of people do in their drafting. I like to do it. It's a table of contents plate. I make it plate 0, and that way you can see what plates and in what locations all of the information is that you might want to gather. So if you're looking for a section or elevations of the revolve or the wall, etc., you know exactly which plate that you're looking for and what plate that thing is on. In the actual packet, I mentioned later that you need ground plan sections and elevations, and that's the order in which this packet is. So first we have a ground plan of one orientation of the set, and this set moves, specifically the revolve turns and the furniture changes. So you have representations of the furniture and you have representations of the revolve, and then when you go to the next ground plan, the revolve moves and the furniture moves. So this changes the pathways as things come in, and as the revolve moves around, you get another change in furniture. So every ground plan that happens in the show needs to be represented. In this second example of drafting, you can see that this front table of contents page I have the same kind of front elevation idea of what the drafting looks like, but I also have started putting on version updates and kind of extra information so someone can see when something has changed. And you can see here, I've included the ground plan, a section view, and a front elevation view of each of these ground plans. Now, the reason I'm doing that is because I want kind of an overall view of what each of these scenic pieces are. This is for Oliver, and the scenery moves around quite a bit, and it changes appearance quite a lot. So you can see over here, furniture is in red and furniture is still in red. I'm using color coding in order to make those things line up. The color coding in the fly system is all based on what actually came in the standard drawing from the theater itself. So I'm not going to change the color coding that they are used to. And for both the section and the front view, I'm going to continue with the same color coding I'm using on the ground plan. But once again, I have a ground plan view for each and every scene where it changes. And the useful part of this picture down here is that you can see a big change between one scene and another scene, even when the actual ground plan doesn't have a big move. It's just, in this case, a scenic backdrop coming out, and it does change the stage visually quite significantly. So if you're doing a musical in particular, a lot of these ground plans happen. I also did this one in this way because I provided them in the scale specifically because this theater requested it and they only had an 11 by 17 printer. So ultimately, I also included all of those ground plans again with the ground plan view and the front view as a thumbnail version all the way through the show. This one is a scene by scene of Act 1. This one is a scene by scene of Act 2. Does the drafting checklist that I give you in this class tell you that you have to do that? No. Does every theater ask you for that? No. Rigoletto only has 3 different scenes. I don't have that. I have one individual section and another section. I have one individual section of one side, evidently. And I don't have the other side because the other side is this revolve. And in this plate in particular, I've split the revolve and shown several sides of the revolve. So, and that just means a little turntable bit. Because this set has a very stationary wall right here that doesn't really change throughout most of the show, it doesn't necessitate necessarily a scene by scene all the way through. Also, nothing changes between those acts, so it is purely Act 1, Act 2, and then Act 3. So these 3 ground plans suffice as a scene by scene. Oliver is very different. We go from a location back to the last location to a new location, and we go back and forth quite a bit. So because of that, I need scene by scenes that are both descriptive of a ground plan and a front view, in order to help people see what's happening. Now, a lot of the times I will do this front view in the form of model photos rather than purely drafting, because that also helps to show color and gives everybody a good idea of the location that we're in. Then there's elevations of each and every piece of scenery. So in this case, you have the front view, the side view, and the top view. These portals are a little hard to see, but this is another good example. This is the flying piece at the back, which has a front view, a top view, and a side view. Once again, I've got the whole platform front view. I did a simplified front view so that you can also see the upstage side of that platform, and the top view and a section view. I broke out those two solid pieces so that it was more clear. This is also kind of why there's 26 pages to this drafting packet. This is the staircases, this is the doors. This is 2 flying units which are covered in fabric. So I've denoted the fabric in another color because that's likely to be added on. I also noted that and what that meant down here, but then I have the plan view, the front view, and the side view for each one of these pieces. It's also important that these things line up so that they're in conjunction with one another, so that you know that they're supposed to be the same height. The flying windows, there are 3 of them that are identical. So here you can see I just noted that there are 3 of them, and you have the size of the windows. And if you don't notate 2 things, the idea is that they're the same height. So like this one over here, I've notated at 10 foot, 1 3/4 inch. And that means that I don't have to dimension the side view because the assumption is that this is the same. Like if it goes across, that's the same. I also dimensioned the diagonal version of this because the reason I made it that weird measurement is that it's 10 foot 2 if it was cut out of flat lumber. I rounded off that number rather than rounding off the height of the whole piece. And I want to make that clear in the way that I dimension it. But I don't have to dimension that it's 7 foot 2 wide because these 2 things line up with one another. In Rigoletto, you can see that when I got to the turntable here, the revolve, I've got a lot of extra information that's just because I think it needs to be there. I've got a little thumbnail of what the revolve looks like. I've got a label that this is the palace side, this is the Rigoletto / inside. And I have a front view of both of those composited together. But then I take off all of those units and show just the structure underneath and how that is being put together, because it's kind of complicated to see it through everything else on top of it. So this is what I mean by this is not a prescribed idea of what this drafting should be. This is me going, I have to do a front side, a side view, and a plan view. And I drafted these 3 and I went, this is not enough. I can't tell what's going on. And if you can't tell what's going on, somebody else can't tell what's going on. So I drew the other side, and then I broke out the platforms, and then I took each individual piece off of that wall and I broke it up into individual slices. And I made sure that it had a plan view, a front view, a side view, and if it's on the turntable and we see both sides, we need a back view. So each and every one of those pieces has all of those items, including all of these pieces put together, and I took each one of those and separated them again. Now, because I drafted this on a computer, I could easy peasy just pull those pieces out and copy paste them. But it also goes to the part that ultimately, if you think you need extra information, you should provide it. So at the end of this document, one of the things I provided was a map. So I wanted a lot of different textures to be appearing on this. So steel scrap, expanded steel, hard plate surfaces, corrugated metal, texture. And so I measured all of the extra pieces that we had. And then the drafted slices that are in this are specific shapes that I'm asking for. And I'm asking for them to be in particular materials. So hard painted surface is all going to be textured with joint compound and sawdust in order to create something that feels very textured. And that's all of the orange color. But then this pink color is all going to be painted to look like wood. So it could be wood, it could be foam, it could be something else. It doesn't matter to me what it's actually made of, but this is what I want it to look like. Is this a normal piece of drafting? Absolutely not. It's something I made up because I thought that that was important in this particular show. And every show is like that. You're going to have specific things that you need a sitting person because you want to illustrate that this needs to be sat on and that you want to make sure it's sturdy enough to do so. You may have furniture or specific things that you need to build or specific reasons that you need to build them, or you may have material suggestions. There are so many, or props like I just showed in Oliver, there are so many different things that you're going to include in your drafting, whether that's drops that have to be mostly created by your scenic charge artist, or the organic elements like rocks that are going to need to be altered by your scenic charge artist, or if you're going to have a complicated piece that's curved, you may need to flatten that out. So this, I wasn't sure if I should do a flattened elevation or a traditional elevation where these things are visually getting tighter together as they come toward the audience. And I thought this didn't portray enough information, so I created that flattened version. Drafting is a set language, but just like the same way all of us can tell different stories, and some of us can speak in poetry, drafting is a very interesting and innovative way to talk about three-dimensional objects in two-dimensional space and have everybody understand what is being built. A lot of them can also look really beautiful and interesting, and that's not necessarily the goal. They need to convey the information that needs to be conveyed for the process of the show, not necessarily that they need to be pieces of art in and of themselves. However, the easier they are to read, the better that information is digested.